What's good, history sleuths? Welcome back to the channel where we dig deep into the untold stories of America's most fascinating dynasties. Today we're stepping into the sun-soaked, scandal-filled world of the Brickell family, Miami's original power players who transformed a swampy frontier into a booming metropolis. From a chance meeting in an Australian gold mining camp to amassing a fortune worth hundreds of millions in today's dollars, William and Mary Brickell's journey is the stuff of legends. They rubbed shoulders with tycoons like Henry Flagler and outsmarted the game with land deals that shaped Miami's skyline. But hold up. Behind the philanthropy and prestige, there's a shadow. Whispers of questionable land grabs, bitter family rifts, and scandals swept under the rug rival the darkest secrets of America's Gilded Age, from Teapot Dome to Flagler's own mysteries. So buckle up, hit that subscribe button, smash the like, and join us as we peel back the curtain on the Brickell family's glittering empire and the secrets they didn't want you to know. From new money to old money, picture this. A rugged trader and a sharp-witted Englishwoman meet. In an Australian gold rush camp, sparks fly, and they end up building a legacy that rivals the Rockefellers, but with a Miami twist. William and Mary Brickell's story is packed with ambition, jaw-dropping wealth, and enough secrets to make a soap opera blush. Think shady land deals, family betrayals, and whispers of scandals buried deeper than a Florida sinkhole. We're not just rehashing their tale, we're peeling back the layers with fresh details from Wikipedia, Miami Herald archives, and local historians to give you the full, unfiltered scoop. So grab a drink, hit that subscribe button, and let's unravel the Brickell dynasty's rise from gritty new money to polished old money and why their shadow still looms large over Miami. Let's set the scene. It's the 1850s and the world's a chaotic place. Gold fever's got folks scrambling to places like Australia, where our story kicks off. William Barnwell Brickell, born in 1817 in South Carolina, is a tough-as-nails trader with a knack for sniffing out opportunity. He's no stranger to roughing it, having grown up in a state where ambition often outpaced infrastructure. Across the globe, Mary Bulmer, born in 1836 in Yorkshire, England, is a woman with brains and grit, chasing her own dreams in a male-dominated world. Fate throws them together in an Australian gold mining camp, a place buzzing with dreamers, schemers, and drifters. Sparks fly, they tie the knot, and by the 1860s they're in Cleveland, Ohio, laying the groundwork for their next big move. But Cleveland's too tame for their wild spirits, so in 1871, they roll the dice and head to a near-empty corner of Florida called Miami. Back then, Miami wasn't the neon-lit party capital we know. It was a humid, alligator-filled wilderness with barely a road to its name. The Brickells saw potential where others saw swamp. Here's where things get juicy. The Brickells scoop up 2,507 acres of prime land, stretching from Coconut Grove to the Miami River, an area that's now the beating heart of downtown Miami. This wasn't just a random purchase, it was a calculated power move. They set up shop at Brickell Point, right near the old Fort Dallas, running a trading post that became the lifeblood of the area. Think of it as the Amazon of its day, supplying settlers, Native Americans, and anyone passing through with goods via their schooner, the Margaret. William's out there wheeling and dealing while Mary's running the show as postmaster, keeping the mail flowing and the community connected. Their trading post wasn't just a store, it was a hub where deals were struck, gossip was swapped, and Miami's future was shaped. According to the Miami Herald, their post office was one of the first in the region, making Mary a key figure in tying this frontier outpost to the wider world. Now let's talk money. By the time William passed in 1908, the Brickell fortune was estimated at $10 to $20 million, Adjust that for inflation, and we're talking $300 to $600 million today, per Forbes. That's serious cash built on land sales and savvy investments. But the real magic happened after William's death, when Mary took the reins. This woman was a visionary, the kind of person who could see skyscrapers where others saw mangroves. She turned Brickell Avenue into Millionaire's Row, a stretch of jaw-dropping mansions that screamed wealth and ambition. Think of it as Miami's answer to Hearst's San Simeon, but with palm trees and a better view. Mary didn't just sell land, she shaped a city. She worked alongside Julia Tuttle, another Miami pioneer, to donate land to Henry Flagler's Florida East Coast Railway. That move was a game changer, convincing Flagler to extend his railroad to Miami and sparking the city's explosive growth. Without the Brickell's land and hustle, Miami might still be a sleepy fishing village. But here's the thing. Big money comes with big shadows. The Brickell's rise wasn't all sunshine and coconuts. Their land deals raised eyebrows, even back then. Some historians, like those cited in the Nootropic, suggest their acquisitions weren't always above board. Florida's frontier was a wild west of murky property claims and whispers of strong-arm tactics or exploiting legal loopholes dogged the family. It's not unlike the ethical questions around Edward Doheny Teapot Dome scandal, where oil wealth and shady deals went hand in hand. Then there were the family rifts. William and Mary had kids, William III, Charles, and Maud, among others, but the next generation didn't always see eye to eye. By the 1920s, disputes over inheritance and land management fractured the family, with some siblings barely speaking. Local blogs like Miami History note that William III, who built more mansions on Brickell Avenue, clashed with his brother Charles, who focused on projects like the Brickell Apartments. These feuds weren't just personal, they chipped away at the family's wealth, leaving them with a new money stigma that clung like humidity. Despite the drama, the Brickells weren't just about stacking cash. They gave back in ways that still echo today. In 1921, Mary donated 2.5 acres to create Brickell Park, a green oasis in the heart of Miami. This wasn't some small gesture. It was a legacy move, on par with Andrew Carnegie's libraries or Andrew Mellon's National Gallery. The park's still there, a reminder of Mary's commitment to her city. She also cared about Miami's marginalized communities, particularly black residents, at a time when segregation was the norm. According to a 2018 piece in the Nootropic, Mary advocated for fair treatment of black workers and tenants, a stance that set her apart from many of her peers. Her role as postmaster gave her influence, and she used it to foster community ties, much like the Astors shaped New York's social scene. This blend of philanthropy and social savvy helped the Brickells inch toward old money status, rubbing shoulders with elites like Flagler and Tuttle, not unlike how Onassis cemented his place among global aristocrats. Let's zoom in on their assets, because this is where the Brickell empire shines. Beyond their 2,507 acres in Miami, they own chunks of Fort Lauderdale and Brickell Hammock, a lush area that's now prime real estate. Their trading post and schooner kept cash flowing, but it was Mary's real estate game that turned their fortune into a dynasty. After William's death, she didn't just sit on the land, she developed it. Brickell Avenue's mansions, built by her and her sons, were the talk of the town, drawing comparisons to the Cavendish family's preservation of their English estates. Unlike the Vanderbilts, who burned through their wealth on lavish parties, Mary played the long game, ensuring the Brickell name endured. The family also left a cultural mark with the Brickell Mausoleum, a grand resting place for their kin, later relocated by Maud Brickell in the 1960s. Think of it as Miami's version of Hearst's Castle, a symbol of wealth and permanence. Who were the key players in this saga? William Barnwell Brickell was the hustler, a trader who co-founded Miami with a vision as big as the Everglades. Mary Bulmer Brickell was the brains, a developer and philanthropist who outshone many of her male peers. Their son William III, born in 1869, kept the family's real estate game strong, building more of those Brickell Avenue mansions before his death in 1942. Charles Brickell, born in 1874, took a different path, focusing on projects like the Brickell Apartments, until his passing in 1925. Maud Brickell, born in 1880, played a quieter but crucial role, preserving the family's legacy by moving their remains to the mausoleum. Fast forward to the 20th century, and Mary Brickell Laws, William III's daughter, became a Miami society figure, keeping the family name in the spotlight until her death in 1989. Today, Bea Brickell, a great-granddaughter, is the family's historian, sharing their story with pride, as noted in a 2020 Miami blog post. The Brickell legacy is everywhere in Miami. Brickell Avenue, with its skyscrapers and condos, is a direct descendant of Mary's Millionaire's Row. It's Miami's Wall Street, a testament to the family's vision, much like Flagler's Railways opened up Florida's coast. Brickell Park remains a community gem, and the mausoleum, though less known, adds a touch of mystique. But the controversies linger. Those land deal questions, the family feuds, and rumors of suppressed scandals, some say involving financial missteps or personal betrayals, echo the Mellon family's tax evasion dramas, or even the Umayyad dynasty's ancient power struggles. A 2019 piece in the Miami New Times hints at lost diaries or letters that might hold clues to these secrets, but they've never surfaced. What sets the Brickells apart is their staying power. Unlike the Goulds, whose wealth fizzled out, or the Vanderbilts, who partied their fortune away, the Brickells built something lasting. Mary's real estate empire laid the foundation for modern Miami. Much like the Grosvenor family's London properties still define that city. Their story isn't just about money, it's about vision, hustle, and the messy human drama that comes with building a dynasty. From their gold rush romance to their Miami reign, the Brickells proved you don't need a blue blood pedigree to leave a mark. You just need the guts to seize the moment. Questionable Spanish land grant purchases. Let's go back to 1868, a year that, without many people realizing it, set the stage for one of the most influential land empires in Florida's history. It was the year William Brickell, a savvy trader from South Carolina, made a quiet but bold move. He purchased 2,507 acres of land from a woman named Harriet English. On paper, it was just another real estate transaction. In reality, it was the opening act of a saga steeped in ambition, disputed land grants, and uncomfortable silences. That plot of land would eventually become the beating heart of modern Miami, from Coconut Grove to the banks of the Miami River. It would fuel the rise of a family dynasty and reshape an entire city. But behind the glamour of skyscrapers and millionaire estates lies a tangled web of questionable deeds, displaced communities, and a past that Miami rarely likes to talk about. At the time of the purchase, Florida was still a wild and largely undeveloped frontier. Miami itself was barely more than a smudge on the map, a humid maze of mangroves and mosquitoes, more swamp than city. But William Brickell saw something else. He had grit, experience, and the sharp instincts of a trader who had spent years building a successful outpost near Fort Dallas. His wife Mary, whom he had met in an Australian gold camp, was just as formidable, intelligent, tough, and tireless. Together, they weren't just surviving, they were plotting to own the future. And that began with this land deal. which would later be valued at over $500 million in today's terms. The catch? The title to the land was rooted in Spanish land grants that had always been surrounded by suspicion. To understand why these grants were controversial, you have to rewind even further, back to the late 1700s and early 1800s, when Spain controlled Florida and was desperately trying to keep it. In an effort to boost settlement and curb resistance from native populations, Spanish authorities handed out massive land grants, thousands of acres at a time, to anyone willing to pledge loyalty or claim they'd farmed the land. Some of these grants were real, many weren't. When the United States took control of Florida in 1821, the entire system of land titles descended into chaos. The U.S. created a board of land commissioners to sift through the mess, and what they found was a disaster. Forgeries, backdated documents, speculative claims built on nothing but ambition. Among the most infamous landholders in this period was Richard Fitzpatrick, a politically connected planter who had acquired large swaths of southern Florida during the 1820s. He also happened to be Harriet English's brother, the same Harriet who later passed the land to William Brickell. Fitzpatrick's land holdings were already the subject of disputes when he fled during the Second Seminole War in the 1830s. By the time Harriet took over, the titles were murky at best. Local Seminole traders, who had long lived, hunted, and worshipped on the land, were furious. A 2017 post from the Miami History blog quotes them describing these grants as nothing less than legalized theft. In their eyes, Spain had no right to grant land it didn't own, and men like Fitzpatrick, and by extension Brickell, were profiting off of stolen ground. But William Brickell wasn't deterred. If anything, he saw the chaos as an opening. With the Miami River, the coastline, and a growing trade network all within reach, this was prime land just waiting to explode in value. He closed the deal with Harriet English, took the title, and began building his empire. And while the purchase may have been quiet, it was far from unnoticed. Whispered accusations followed almost immediately. Seminole traders protested. Local settlers raised eyebrows. Some even suggested that hush money or strategic alliances had been used to smooth the deal. A 2019 Miami New Times article compared the silence surrounding the purchase to the Teapot Dome scandal, implying that there may have been shady dealings designed to keep Miami's development on track, no matter the cost. There's no smoking gun, no definitive evidence of fraud, but the lack of transparency still casts a long shadow over the Brickell name. The legal mess surrounding Spanish land grants was more than just a technical issue. It represented a systemic problem, one that allowed opportunists to manipulate paperwork, bypass treaties, and acquire land without ever stepping foot on it. According to a 2020 piece in the South Florida Sun-Sentinel, Fitzpatrick's titles were disputed by both the federal government and the Seminole Nation. These disputes weren't just about property, they were about identity, sovereignty, and survival. The Seminole people, who had been displaced during multiple wars and forced onto ever-shrinking territories, saw the 1823 Treaty of Moultrie Creek as a rare promise of protection. But those promises meant little when settlers began arriving with paper titles, signed decades earlier by Spanish officials who were long gone. In a 2023 lecture at Florida International University, a Seminole historian described the Brickell land deal as a chapter in an ongoing tragedy, one where sacred lands were quietly erased from maps, sold to outsiders, and built over without a second thought. Of course, William Brickell wasn't the only player in Florida's land rush. He was just one of many ambitious men who saw the state as a blank slate waiting to be claimed. Henry Flagler, later a major partner of the Brickells, made his own fortune bending land laws in St. Augustine and Palm Beach. Even Julia Tuttle, celebrated as the mother of Miami, secured her land through disputed channels. What made the Brickell deal different was its scale and its timing. Those 2,507 acres became the foundation of downtown Miami. Without them, the Brickell name might have remained associated with a small trading post. Instead, it became synonymous with power and wealth. After William's death in 1908, Mary Brickell took the reins. She transformed their land into Millionaire's Row, a glittering strip of mansions and elite society that rivaled anything in Gilded Age New York or San Francisco. It was her vision, built on William's gamble, that cemented the Brickells as Miami royalty. But we can't forget the people who paid the price for that legacy. The Seminoles weren't the only ones pushed aside. Black and Bahamian workers who built early Miami were often denied fair wages, land, or recognition. While Mary Brickell is sometimes credited with advocating for labor equity later in life, a 2018 feature in The New Tropic reminds us that the system itself was rigged against these communities from the beginning. The story echoes others from America's industrial age. Henry Clay Frick built a coal empire by crushing unionized miners. Robber barons claimed public land for private railroads. The Brickells weren't emperors, but they played the same game, building greatness on foundations laced with injustice. What's most unsettling is how these truths were buried. Miami needed to grow. The Brickells made that happen. Their trading post at Brickell Point became the region's lifeline. Their donation of land to Flagler's Florida East Coast Railway sealed the city's future. So the uncomfortable questions about titles, treaties, and who really owned the land were conveniently ignored. A 2016 Miami Herald piece quoted a historian calling the Brickell deals expedient, not ethical, driven more by momentum than morality. It's a familiar story in American development. Do what it takes to win, ask forgiveness later, and yet the mystery isn't over. There are still secrets waiting to be uncovered. Seminole oral histories remain closely guarded, entrusted only to researchers who've earned their respect. Spanish land grant records, buried in archives in Tallahassee or the Library of Congress, might shed light on how Richard Fitzpatrick built his claims. A 2022 Florida Historical Society journal hints at lost correspondence within the Brickell family, letters that might reveal how William justified the purchase or how Mary wrestled with its moral implications. A 2020 genealogist blog suggests that Harriet English herself may have kept detailed notes that never made it to public record. The internet is full of theories, some wild, some plausible, about fraud and forgery. But until real evidence emerges, the full truth remains just out of reach. One thing is clear. This wasn't just a real estate transaction. It was the origin story of a dynasty. The Brickells turned that land into wealth, power, and permanence. Brickell Avenue, now lined with glass towers and multinational banks, stands as a monument to their vision. In 1921, Mary donated part of their land to create Brickell Park, a quiet patch of green that still exists today, perched awkwardly beside the memory of Seminole loss. The family's story mirrors those of other Gilded Age giants. Carnegie with his libraries, Rockefeller with his oil fields, Flagler with his railroads. But the Brickells stand apart in one important way. They endured. While the Vanderbilts faded into scandal and the Goulds into obscurity, the Brickell name never left the city they helped create. The legacy passed on to their children, William III, Charles, and Maud, was both blessing and burden. William III carried on the real estate tradition until his death in 1942. Charles, younger and more reserved, pursued housing developments but died in 1925. Maud quietly became the keeper of the family's memory, moving their remains to the Brickell Mausoleum in the 1960s. Into the 20th century, Mary Brickell Laws, William III's daughter, became a fixture in Miami society until her death in 1989. But the new money stigma still clung to them, much like the shadows that followed the Cabots over their family's ties to the opium trade. Today, the Brickell family name lives on through B. Brickell, a great-granddaughter who has taken on the role of unofficial historian, balancing family pride with a sober acknowledgement of their complicated inheritance. The land deal that sparked all of this didn't just change the Brickells, it changed Miami. It defined the city's economic core, but it did so by paving over other people's histories. The Seminoles' loss became precedent. The exclusion of black and Bahamian laborers hardened into systemic patterns. A 2024 editorial in the Miami Times reflects on how these early land seizures shaped racial and economic inequalities that persist in real estate today. The Brickells weren't the only ones involved, but their deal was a turning point. And what makes their story so gripping is its moral ambiguity. Mary Brickell's secret affair rumors. Let's dive straight into the sizzling scandal that nearly upended the Brickell family's reign over Miami, the 1890s rumors of Mary Brickell's alleged affair with a shadowy figure tied to Henry Flagler's railroad empire. This isn't just gossip. It's a tale that could have shattered the image of Mary, the razor-sharp matriarch, who turned the Brickells' controversial 1868 land grab into a fortune shaping Miami's skyline. As William Brickell's health waned, whispers swirled that Mary was caught in a forbidden romance, possibly with a rugged railway surveyor charting the tracks that transformed Florida. The family allegedly went into overdrive to bury these rumors, desperate to protect her status as a developer and philanthropist, mirroring the Gilded Age's most notorious cover-ups. We're unpacking every detail from the original story, weaving in rich layers of Miami's high society intrigue, the gritty reality of 1890s Florida, and the cutthroat world of railroad ambition to keep you locked in. This is the story of Mary's rumored romance, and the fierce battle to keep it hushed. It's the 1890s, and Miami's shedding its swampy skin. No longer a mosquito-plagued outpost, it's a frontier town crackling with potential, fueled by the Brickells' relentless hustle. Their trading post at Brickell Point, built on that questionable 1868 purchase of 2,507 acres from Harriet English, remains a vital hub, buzzing with traders, settlers, and Seminole merchants. Those acres stretching from Coconut Grove to the Miami River are now gold, prime real estate that's the backbone of their empire, valued at $10 to $20 million by 1908, $300 to $600 million today. William Brickell, born in 1817 in South Carolina, and Mary, born in 1836 in Yorkshire, are Miami's unofficial royalty, their legacy cemented by their land donation to Henry Flagler's Florida East Coast Railway, a move that's about to put Miami on the map. But by the mid-1890s, William's fading fast. His health, likely battered by age, the grind of frontier life, and tropical scourges like malaria or yellow fever, is slipping, leaving him a respected but sidelined figure. Mary steps into the spotlight, steering their fortune with a steel grip, transforming Brickell Avenue into Millionaire's Row, a dazzling parade of mansions that rivals the opulence of William Randolph Hearst's San Simeon. Mary's no ordinary figure. She's a powerhouse, English-born, fiercely intelligent, and outmaneuvering men in a world that rarely gave women the reins. As Miami's early postmaster, she kept the town tethered to the outside world. As a developer, she's crafting a city's future. Her partnership with Julia Tuttle to lure Flagler's Railway was a masterstroke, setting Miami up as a boomtown. But as her star soars, so does the gossip. By the mid-1890s, whispers spread that Mary's not just making deals, but maybe crossing lines with a man tied to Flagler's Railroad, possibly a surveyor, one of those tough, charismatic types mapping Florida's wilds for the tracks. These rumors weren't just tea for Miami's elite. They were dynamite, threatening to torch Mary's reputation as a philanthropist, mother, and the linchpin of the Brickell legacy at a time when a woman's honor was her shield. Why were these rumors so toxic? Miami's 1890s elite was a small, cutthroat circle, old Southern families, new money tycoons, and frontier dreamers, all vying for status in a town finding its footing. Gossip was their sport, swapped at lavish dinners in Coconut Grove's early hotels or whispered over whiskey at trading posts. Women like Mary faced a brutal double standard. Men could dodge a fling with a wink, but a woman's reputation was her lifeline. An affair, real or not, could have branded Mary as reckless, eroding her authority and arming her rivals. Land speculators eyeing her acres, settlers jealous of her wealth, or Flagler's ambitious lieutenants with leverage to challenge her deals. The Brickell fortune, already shadowed by that 1868 land purchase, tied to dubious Spanish grants and Seminole displacement, relied on trust. Mary's image was the glue holding it together, and a personal scandal could have unraveled it all, spooking investors, souring ties with Flagler, or reigniting old grumbles about their land grabs ethics. Who was this mystery man fueling the rumors? No name survives, but fingers pointed to someone in Flagler's railway orbit. Possibly a surveyor, the kind of guy who trekked through Florida's jungles to plot the tracks that changed the state. Surveyors were Flagler's boots on the ground. Young, bold, often charming, spending months scouting routes and negotiating with landowners like Mary for easements or land rights. These close encounters, meetings over maps, talks about Miami's future, created fertile ground for gossip. Another theory suggests a mid-level engineer, someone with enough sway to catch Mary's eye but low profile enough to avoid the spotlight. Or perhaps it was a business associate, maybe a lawyer or financier handling the railway's complex deals. Flagler's operation drew sharp, ambitious men, and Mary, a master negotiator, would have crossed paths with them constantly as she donated land and brokered deals to cement Miami's growth. The railway's arrival in 1896, right after these rumors peaked, turned Miami into a hotspot, but also put Mary under a harsher glare, amplifying every whisper. The timing stokes the flames. William's decline, likely a brutal mix of aging, decades of frontier stress, and diseases like malaria, which plagued South Florida, left him less active by the mid-1890s. He was still a revered co-founder, but Mary was the one in the trenches, hashing out deals with Flagler's team and driving their land sales. This independence made her a lightning rod for chatter. Miami's elite, though small, was a gossip viper's nest. Socialites, traders, and early reporters swapping tales at gatherings in Coconut Grove's parlors or over drinks at makeshift saloons. Mary stood out, English-born, whip-smart, and running a fortune. She was a magnet for awe and envy. Some hailed her as a pioneer who could match tycoons like Flagler. Others, especially men rattled by her power or women jealous of her clout, were eager to throw shade. An affair rumor was a perfect dagger to dull her shine, not unlike the gossip that trailed Eleanor Roosevelt over her alleged bond with Lorena Hickok or William Randolph Hearst's secret daughter with Marion Davies. Hushed to protect his media throne, was there really an affair? The truth's a tough nut to crack. The rumors are all speculation with no love letters, diaries, or confessions to pin it down. But the family's alleged scramble to bury the talk is telling. The Brickells had everything riding on Mary's reputation. Her clout held their land empire, philanthropy, and founder status together. Their fortune, worth millions, hinged on land sales and investor trust, which could have crumbled if Mary's name was tarnished. A scandal might have strained their bond with Flagler, whose railroad was Miami's economic pulse, or given rivals ammo to challenge their land deals, already dogged by that 1868 purchase's murky ties to Spanish grants and Seminole loss. Suppressing the gossip wasn't just about ego. It was about survival in a frontier town where trust was king. Flagler himself was a master at damage control. His own messy life, including whispers of an illegitimate child, and his scandalous 1901 marriage to Mary Lily Keenan, was tightly managed to shield his empire. The Brickells likely borrowed his playbook, using their sway to silence the buzz, maybe by leaning on newspaper editors, charming socialites, or paying off loose lips in 1890s Miami's tight-knit scene. The lack of proof doesn't mean the rumors were pure fiction. Miami's gossip mill was relentless, and tales like these often had a spark of truth. Mary's frequent meetings with Flagler's men, surveyors plotting routes, financiers sealing deals, would have raised eyebrows, especially since she often worked unchaperoned, a bold move for her era. Her charisma and intellect were magnetic. She could command a room of tycoons or charm a surveyor over a land map. Picture a late-night meeting, hashing out railway terms under flickering lamplight, or a shared moment of respect between two ambitious souls in Miami's high-stakes boom. Maybe it was a fleeting spark, a too-warm smile, a lingering glance, or maybe a rival spun a mundane exchange into scandal. Some even wonder if Mary, weighed down by William's illness and the empire's demands, found solace in someone who matched her fire. Either way, the rumors expose how fragile her position was. One whisper could have toppled her from trailblazer to outcast, threatening Brickell Avenue's mansions and the park she'd gift to Miami in 1927. Why does this scandal cut so deep? The Brickell empire was a high-wire act built on trust in Mary's untouchable image. Their millions, tied to land sales and development, needed her credibility to keep investors and buyers in line. Their philanthropy, like Brickell Park, aimed to cement their old money status, rivaling Carnegie's libraries or Mellon's National Gallery. But an affair rumor could have painted Mary as a liability, especially in a society obsessed with women's virtue. It's like Theodore Roosevelt's rumored fling with his wife's secretary, Alice Wharton, hushed to save his political career, or Hearst's secret daughter with Davies, buried to protect his media empire. Mary's rumored romance, true or not, had to be smothered to keep the Brickell name pristine. William Brickell's Civil War, White House stay. William Brickell, the rugged pioneer who helped forge Miami, lived in the White House during the Civil War as an alleged aide to Abraham Lincoln. If you've been following our deep dives into the Brickells' shady 1868 land deal and Mary's scandalous 1890s affair rumors, you know this family's no stranger to secrets. Now, we're unearthing a tale that places William, born in 1817 in South Carolina, at the heart of America's darkest conflict, with whispers of hidden motives, possibly Confederate sympathies or wartime profiteering, clouding his role. The Brickells allegedly kept this chapter quiet, much like other Gilded Age tycoons buried their skeletons. We're unpacking every detail from the original story, weaving in fresh layers of Civil War intrigue, Lincoln's inner circle, and William's frontier hustle to keep you hooked. This is the story of the pioneer's White House secret and why it stayed buried. It's the early 1860s, and the United States is tearing itself apart. The Civil War is raging, pitting North against South, brother against brother. William Brickell, a South Carolina-born trader with a knack for seizing opportunities, is far from the Miami swamps where he'll later make his mark. He and Mary Bulmer Brickell, his Yorkshire-born wife, met in an Australian gold camp in the 1850s and married settling in Cleveland, Ohio, by the 1860s. Cleveland's a bustling hub, a hotbed of commerce and union activity, but William's no ordinary businessman. According to claims, he's not just trading goods or eyeing land deals. He's living in the White House, serving as an aide to President Abraham Lincoln himself. This is a jaw-dropping assertion, a future Miami founder rubbing shoulders with the great emancipator at the nerve center of the Union. But the details are murky, and whispers suggest William's role was deliberately obscured, possibly due to Confederate leanings or profiteering schemes that echoed the shady dealings of other wartime figures. The Brickell family, or their descendants, allegedly kept this chapter under wraps, much like their later efforts to hush Mary's affair rumors or dodge questions about their 1868 land grab. What was William doing in the White House? The claim paints him as an aide, but Lincoln's inner circle was a complex web of advisors, staffers, and hangers-on, from military aides to personal secretaries like John Hay and John Nicolay. An aide could mean anything, someone handling logistics, passing messages, or even advising on trade or frontier matters, given William's knack for commerce. Born in South Carolina, a hotbed of secession, William's roots raise eyebrows. By 1861, South Carolina was the heart of the Confederacy, and a Southerner in Lincoln's orbit would have been suspect, especially in a White House crawling with spies and double agents. Some whisper that William's role was hidden because he harbored Confederate sympathies, perhaps acting as a go-between or informant, though no hard evidence backs this. Others suggest he was profiteering, cashing in on wartime trade like some tycoons did, raking in profits while the nation bled. This wasn't uncommon. Figures like Columbus Delano, Lincoln's Interior Secretary, faced corruption charges for wartime deals, and J.P. Morgan made a fortune selling defective rifles to the Union. If William was in the White House, his motives might have been less than pure, and the Brickells later buried the truth to protect their Miami legacy. Let's set the stage. It's 1861, and the Civil War's chaos is swallowing the nation. Lincoln's White House is a fortress of tension. Generals plotting battles, politicians scheming, and Mary Todd Lincoln hosting lavish receptions amid the gloom. William, in his mid-40s, is a seasoned trader with a restless spirit. He and Mary are in Cleveland, a key Union supply hub, where William's likely dabbling in goods like timber, furs, or even munitions, given Ohio's role in arming the North. But the White House claim suggests he's more than a merchant. He's got a foot in Washington's power circle. How did a South Carolina native land such a gig? One theory ties to his trading savvy. Lincoln's administration needed men who could navigate supply chains or frontier networks, and William's experience in rough-and-tumble markets might have caught someone's eye. Another possibility is political connections. Cleveland was a hotbed of Republican activity, and William could have linked up with Lincoln's allies, maybe through Ohio's powerful senators or businessmen tied to the war effort. But his Southern roots would have made him a risky pick, especially as paranoia about Confederate spies gripped the Capitol. Why hide this role? If William was an aide, why isn't his name in history books? The whispers point to two possibilities: Confederate sympathies or profiteering. As a South Carolinian, William might have had family or old ties to the South even if he'd left years before. The Civil War split families. Brothers fought on opposite sides, and loyalties were murky. If William leaned Confederate, even quietly, his White House stay could have been a cover for espionage or influence peddling. though this is pure speculation. No records confirm it. More likely is profiteering. The war was a gold mine for shrewd operators. Tycoons like Delano funneled government contracts to cronies, while others smuggled cotton or arms across battle lines. William, with his trading chops, could have used a White House perch to secure deals, maybe supplying goods to the Union or brokering frontier land sales as the war reshaped territories. If he was skimming profits or bending rules, the Brickells would have had reason to obscure it later, especially as they built their Miami empire worth $10 to $20 million by 1908 on a clean image. The White House itself was a chaotic place to be. Lincoln's staff was a mix of loyalists and opportunists, and the mansion was more than an office. It was a home, a barracks, and a stage for political theater. Aides often lived there, bunking in spare rooms or cramped quarters, dodging Mary Todd Lincoln's temper and the constant stream of petitioners begging for jobs or pardons. If William was there, he'd have seen Lincoln up close, maybe delivering reports, joining late-night strategy sessions, or overhearing war plans. Imagine him, a rough-edged trader navigating Washington's polished halls, his southern drawl raising hackles among Union diehards. His stay, if real, would have been a high-wire act, balancing ambition with scrutiny in a capital where betrayal lurked everywhere. Could William's Ohio dealings hold clues? Before Miami, he and Mary were in Cleveland, a city pulsing with war activity. Ohio supplied troops, weapons, and goods, and traders like William thrived in the chaos. He might have brokered deals for supplies, grain, horses, or even munitions that caught Lincoln's attention or his advisors. Cleveland was also a stop on the Underground Railroad, and while there's no evidence William was involved, his trading networks could have overlapped with abolitionist circles, giving him a Union-friendly veneer despite his Southern roots. Alternatively, his land dealings in Ohio, buying or selling frontier plots, might have tied to wartime expansion plans, as the Union eyed Western territories to counter Confederate claims. If William leveraged a White House role to boost his deals, it'd explain why the Brickells later downplayed it, especially as they faced scrutiny over their 1868 Miami land purchase, which displaced Seminoles and sparked ethical questions. The Confederate sympathies angle is trickier. South Carolina was the rebellion's heart, and William's birth there would have raised red flags. The White House was paranoid about spies. Confederate agents like Rose Greenhow operated in Washington, passing secrets to the South. If William had even a whiff of Southern loyalty, his role would have been hushed to avoid scandal. But there's no proof he was a spy. Online claims of espionage are baseless, more fiction than fact. Still, his Southern ties could have made him a useful go-between, maybe liaising with border state moderates or Southern Unionists. Lincoln often used informal emissaries to gauge sentiment or broker deals, and William's trading background might have fit the bill. If so, the Brickells might have buried this to avoid tainting their later Miami legacy, much like they hushed Mary's 1890s affair rumors to protect her developer image. Profiteering feels more plausible. The Civil War was a feeding frenzy for tycoons. J.P. Morgan bought faulty rifles from the Union and resold them at a markup. Cotton smugglers ran blockades for huge profits. William, with his trader's instincts, could have sniffed out similar opportunities, maybe securing contracts for Ohio goods or speculating on land as the war shifted borders. If he used a White House role to grease the wheels, it'd align with figures like Delano, who faced corruption probes for wartime kickbacks, or Jay Gould, who manipulated gold markets during the conflict. The Brickells, aiming for respectability in Miami, would have had every reason to scrub this from their story, especially as they built Millionaires Row and donated Brickell Park in 1927 to cement their philanthropy. Was William really there? The claims tantalizing but unverified. Lincoln's staff records are spotty. Many aides were informal, their roles undocumented. The White House was a revolving door of advisors, and a trader like William could have slipped in through Ohio connections or trade expertise. His Cleveland years are murky, but traders often move between commerce and politics during the war. If he was in Washington, his stay might have been brief, a few months, maybe a year, enough to spark the claim, but not to leave a paper trail. The lack of evidence doesn't disprove it, it just deepens the mystery. The Brickells' later silence, mirroring their handling of Mary's affair rumors or their 1868 land deals controversies, suggests they had something to hide, whether it was profiteering, Southern ties, or just the stigma of a murky past. The Civil War's broader context adds weight to this tale. The war wasn't just battles. It was a scramble for power, wealth, and land. Tycoons like Flagler, who'd later partner with the Brickells, got their start in wartime trade, building fortunes that fueled Gilded Age empires. William's White House stay, if true, places him in this crucible, a trader with one foot in the frontier and another in Washington's elite. His South Carolina roots would have made him a wild card, trusted by some, watched by others. If he was profiteering, he'd fit right in with the era's opportunists. If he leaned Confederate, he'd have been playing a dangerous game. Either way, the Brickells later rise in Miami, building an empire worth millions, shaping Brickell Avenue, and leaving a legacy through their park, relied on a clean slate, free of wartime shadows. Family estrangement over land. Sales. The bitter feud between siblings. William Brickell III, Charles Brickell, and their sister Maud, over their mother Mary's land sales in the 1910s. If you've been following our saga of the Brickells' shady 1868 land deal, Mary's scandalous affair rumors, and William's mysterious Civil War White House stay, you know this family's built on ambition and secrets. This is the tale of the siblings who split a dynasty and the lengths they went to cover it up. Picture Miami in the 1910s. It's no longer the wild frontier of William and Mary Brickell's day. It's a booming city riding the wave of Henry Flagler's railroad, which their land donation helped bring in 1896. The Brickell family's 2,507 acres, snatched up in that controversial 1868 deal, have turned into pure gold, prime real estate stretching from Coconut Grove to the Miami River, fueling a fortune worth 10 to 20 million by 1908, or $300 to $600 million today. Mary Brickell, the Yorkshire-born genius who outsmarted tycoons, is still the family's anchor, even after William's death in 1908. She's transformed Brickell Avenue into Millionaire's Row, a glittering strip of mansions rivaling Hearst's San Simeon, and her philanthropy, like donating Brickell Park in 1927, cements her as Miami's matriarch. But by the 1910s, Mary's in her 70s, and her children, William III, born in 1869, Charles, born in 1874, and Maud, born in 1880, are stepping into the spotlight, each with their own ambitions for the family's land empire. What starts as a shared legacy turns into a vicious clash, with the siblings fighting over Mary's land sales. A feud so deep it culminates in Maud's shocking 1946 decision to remove family remains from the Brickell mausoleum. Signaling a rift the Brickells scrambled to hide, much like their efforts to bury earlier scandals. The heart of this drama lies in the 1910s, when Miami's real estate market is exploding. The city's population is surging, drawn by Flagler's railway and Florida's sunny promise. Land prices are skyrocketing, and the Brickells' holdings, once swampy wilderness, are now the hottest commodity in town. Mary, ever the strategist, is selling off parcels to developers, turning acres into cash while shaping Miami's future. Her vision is long-term: preserve the family's wealth, fund their philanthropy, and cement their name in Miami's history. But her kids, William III, Charles, and Maud, aren't on the same page. William III and Charles, both deep in real estate, want to cash in fast, riding the boom to maximize profits. William III's building lavish mansions on Brickell Avenue, adding to Millionaires Row, while Charles is developing projects like the Brickell Apartments, eyeing quick returns. Maud, though less flashy, has her own stake, possibly wanting to hold on to the land for future value or sentimental reasons tied to her parents' legacy. The clash erupts over how Mary's selling the land: too fast, too slow, or to the wrong buyers, splitting the siblings into warring camps. Why did this fight cut so deep? Land wasn't just money, it was the Brickell identity. Those 2,507 acres were William and Mary's life's work, carved from a frontier riddled with Seminole disputes and ethical gray zones. For William III and Charles, the land was a ticket to wealth and power in Miami's elite circles, where real estate was king. They saw the 1910s boom, fueled by speculators, northern investors, and early tourists, as a now or never moment to cash out. Maud, though, might have seen the sales as a betrayal of her parents' vision, especially Mary's careful balance of profit and legacy. The Brickell fortune, already shadowed by that 1868 deal's controversies and Mary's affair rumors, was a tightrope act. A public feud could have tarnished their name, scaring off buyers or exposing old scandals, much like the family's efforts to hush William's Civil War White House role or Mary's 1890s gossip. The siblings' clash wasn't just about dollars, it was about control, loyalty, and the weight of a dynasty. The feud's climax comes in 1946, when Maud makes a move that screams bad blood. She removes family remains from the Brickell Mausoleum, a grand resting place built to honor William and Mary's legacy. This wasn't just a logistical shift, it was a symbolic middle finger, signaling a rift so deep it couldn't be mended. The mausoleum, originally near Brickell Point, was a monument to the family's unity, housing their ancestors' remains as a testament to their Miami empire. Maud's decision to relocate them, possibly to a private plot or another cemetery, felt like a rejection of her brother's path, a final act of defiance in a feud that started over land sales. The Brickells or their descendants worked hard to keep this rift quiet, much like they buried earlier secrets to maintain their polished image as Miami's founders. This cover-up echoes other dynastic feuds, like the Cavendish family's disinherited heirs, or the Astor clan's bitter inheritance battles, where family unity was a facade to protect wealth and status. The 1910s were a wild time for Miami real estate. The city's growth was explosive. Its population jumped from 5,471 in 1910 to over 29,000 by 1920, driven by Flagler's Railway and land speculators betting on Florida's future. The Brickell's land, once bought for pennies, was now worth millions per acre, especially along Brickell Avenue, where developers were snapping up plots for hotels, estates, and early skyscrapers. Mary's sales strategy, methodical, selective, aimed to maximize long-term value while funding projects like Brickell Park. But William III and Charles, both in their prime, saw the boom as a gold rush. William III, a flashy real estate player, was building opulent homes to attract Miami's elite, while Charles focused on denser projects like apartments, catering to the city's growing middle class. Their push for quick sales clashed with Maud's stance. Maybe she wanted to preserve key parcels for future generations, or honor Mary's vision of a lasting legacy, not a fire sale. Maud's role is key but elusive. Less is known about her compared to her brothers, but she was no wallflower. Born in 1880, she grew up in Miami's early days, watching her parents turn wilderness into wealth. By the 1910s, she was in her 30s, possibly managing family affairs or holding her own stake in the land. Her later act, moving the remains in 1946, suggests a deep connection to the family's history, maybe a sense of duty to protect William and Mary's memory. If she opposed the land sales, it could have been practical, holding land for future booms, as Miami's growth showed no signs of slowing, or emotional, tied to the sacrifices her parents made. The feud might have started small, disagreements over specific sales, but snowballed as egos clashed and millions hung in the balance. William III and Charles, as men in a male-dominated era, likely assumed they'd call the shots, but Maud's defiance shows she wasn't backing down, setting the stage for a decades-long rift. Why hide this feud? The Brickells' image was everything. By the 1910s, they were Miami's founding family, their names synonymous with Brickell Avenue, the park, and a fortune rivaling Gilded Age titans. A public spat could have spooked developers who needed a stable family to trust with multi-million-dollar deals. It might have also revived old scandals. The 1868 land grab's seminal fallout, Mary's affair whispers, or William's murky Civil War role, painting the Brickells as dysfunctional. The family's silence mirrors other dynasties' cover-ups, like the Astors' feuds over John Jacob Astor's fortune, or the Goulds' losses under George Gould, where public unity masked private chaos. Keeping the rift quiet was about survival in Miami's cutthroat real estate scene, where reputation was currency. What fueled the siblings' clash? Money, sure, but also power and legacy. William III, the eldest, likely saw himself as the heir apparent, his mansions a bold claim to the Brickell throne. Charles, younger but ambitious, pushed for projects like the Brickell Apartments, betting on Miami's urban future. Maud, though less documented, might have been the family's conscience, guarding her parents' vision against her brother's greed. The 1910s boom amplified their differences. William III and Charles wanted to strike while the iron was hot, while Maud might have feared losing the land's soul. Family dynamics played a role too. William III, as the oldest son, might have expected deference, while Charles, closer in age, pushed back. Maud, as the youngest and a woman, faced an uphill fight to be heard, yet her 1946 mausoleum move proves she held her ground. These tensions echo other dynastic feuds, like the Vanderbilts' squabbles over Cornelius's empire, where siblings battled for control as their parents' shadow loomed. The Mausoleum Act in 1946 is the feud's haunting coda. By then, William III was dead, 1942, Charles long gone, 1925, and Maud, in her 60s, was the last sibling standing. Her decision to move the remains, possibly to a private plot or another cemetery, wasn't just logistical, it was a statement. The Brickell Mausoleum, built near Brickell Point, was a symbol of unity, housing William, Mary, and other kin as a monument to their Miami legacy. Relocating them felt like Maud severing ties with her brother's vision, perhaps blaming their land sales for diluting the family's heritage. It's a chilling parallel to the Cavendish family's disinherited heirs, who were cut off to preserve the dukedom's image, or the Astors' public feuds that masked private betrayals. Maud's act, done quietly, suggests the rift never healed, and the Brickell's descendants kept it hushed to avoid tarnishing their name. Could there be more to this story? Family wills or Maud's private letters might reveal the feud's details, specific sales, heated arguments, or Mary's role as mediator. The Brickell's real estate records could show which parcels sparked the fight, maybe prime lots along Brickell Avenue or Coconut Grove. Miami's 1910 society gossip, preserved in pioneer diaries or early newspapers, might hint at the siblings' clash, though the family's influence likely kept it out of print. These threads keep the mystery alive, a tale of greed and loyalty as gripping as Miami's boom itself. The feud's fallout shaped the Brickell's legacy. William III's mansions and Charles's apartments added to Miami's skyline, but their rush to sell might have cost the family billions in today's terms, as Brickell Avenue's value soared. Maud's quieter path, culminating in the mausoleum move, preserved a piece of their history, but at a personal cost. Their descendants, like Mary Brickell Laws, a society figure until 1989, and B. Brickell, a modern historian, carry a legacy both proud and fractured. The feud mirrors Miami's own story, a city built on ambition, but scarred by disputes over land and power, from Seminole losses to the Brickell's own battles. Seminole trade exploitation. When the Brickell families rise to power, their trading post at Brickell Point, where from 1871 to 1908, they allegedly exploited Seminole traders to build the fortune that shaped Miami's skyline. If you've been following our deep dives into the Brickell's shady 1868 land deal, Mary's scandalous affair rumors, William's mysterious Civil War White House stay, and the siblings' bitter land feud, you know this family's legacy is a tangled web of ambition and secrets. Now we're exposing how William and Mary Brickell's trading post, a lifeline for early Miami, reportedly cheated the Seminoles with low-ball prices for their pelts and sky-high markups on goods, masking it all as fair trade to fuel their empire. The Brickells kept this exploitation quiet, much like they buried other scandals to protect their name. This is the story of the trade that cheated the Seminoles and how it built a dynasty. Picture Miami in 1871. It's a steamy, untamed wilderness, mangroves, alligators, and barely a soul in sight. William Brickell, born in 1817 in South Carolina, and his Yorkshire-born wife Mary, born in 1836, have just rolled the dice on this frontier, moving from Cleveland, Ohio, to stake their claim. They've scooped up 2,507 acres from Coconut Grove to the Miami River in that controversial 1868 deal, land that'll later spark Miami's boom. But for now, their focus is Brickell Point, near the old Fort Dallas, where they set up a trading post that becomes the beating heart of the region. This isn't just a store. It's a hub where settlers, sailors, and Seminole traders swap goods, gossip, and dreams. The Brickell's post, run alongside their schooner, the Margaret, supplies everything from flour to guns, while taking in pelts, hides, and egret plumes from the Seminoles, who've been trading in South Florida for centuries. By 1908, this trade helps build a fortune worth $10 to $20 million, $300 to $600 million today, but whispers say the Brickells got rich by exploiting the Seminoles, offering dirt-cheap prices for their goods and jacking up costs for essentials, all cloaked as fair trade. These practices, hidden from scrutiny, echo the dirty profits of other Gilded Age tycoons, and the Brickells allegedly kept them quiet to protect their Miami legacy. The trading post was a lifeline for the Seminoles, but it came at a cost. By the 1870s, the Seminoles, pushed south during the Seminole Wars, 1817-1858, were rebuilding their lives in the Everglades. They relied on trade to survive, bringing pelts, deer, otter, alligator, and exotic egret plumes, prized for women's hats, to posts like Brickell's. In return, they needed goods, flour, sugar, cloth, tools, and sometimes guns to defend against encroaching settlers. William and Mary, savvy traders, saw the Seminoles as key partners, but the deal wasn't equal. Reports suggest the Brickells paid rock-bottom prices for Seminole goods, pennies for pelts worth dollars in northern markets, while charging steep markups for their wares, like $5 for a sack of flour that cost them $1. This wasn't just business, it was a rigged game, squeezing the Seminoles to maximize profits. The Brickells' wealth tied to their land and trade grew fast, but at the expense of a people already battered by war and displacement. Much like their later land deals displaced Seminoles further. Why was this exploitation so insidious? The Seminoles weren't naive, they'd traded with settlers for decades, but they had little leverage. The Brickell's Post was one of the few reliable trading spots in South Florida, giving them near monopoly power. Other posts, like those in Fort Lauderdale or Key West, were farther, riskier, or less stocked. The Seminoles, living deep in the Everglades, faced long, grueling treks by canoe to reach Brickell Point, often under threat from hostile settlers or disease. They couldn't shop around or haggle hard when flour or ammo was a matter of survival. The Brickells, playing the fair trade card, presented their deals as mutual, but the scales were tipped. This mirrors other Gilded Age exploitation. Think John D. Rockefeller's monopolistic oil tactics, crushing rivals with predatory pricing, or Henry Frick's brutal labor abuses in steel mills, where workers had no choice but to accept raw deals. The Brickells' trade practices, hidden behind a friendly facade, were a cornerstone of their fortune, much like their 1868 land grab or William's rumored Civil War profiteering. The trading post's setup made exploitation easy. Brickell Point was a fortress of commerce, strategically placed where the Miami River met Biscayne Bay, perfect for schooners like the Margaret to ferry goods from Key West or Havana. William, a hard-nosed trader, and Mary, a sharp postmaster who kept the books, ran a tight ship. Their post was a one-stop shop: groceries, tools, clothing, even liquor, drawing Seminoles and settlers alike. But the Seminoles faced a rigged system. Pelts and plumes, their main currency, were undervalued because the Brickells controlled the market, selling them north for huge profits. A deer pelt might fetch 50 cents at the post, but $5 in New York, while a sack of sugar cost the Seminoles triple what settlers paid, due to transport costs or other excuses. These practices weren't unique. Other Florida traders pulled similar tricks. But the Brickells' scale and influence made their impact brutal, fueling a fortune that later built Millionaires Row and Brickell Park. Why keep this quiet? The Brickells' image was gold. By the 1880s, they were Miami's founders, their trading post a symbol of progress. Admitting exploitation would have tarnished their legacy, especially as they courted Flagler's Railway in the 1890s, donated land, and built a philanthropist's reputation. Public backlash could have sparked Seminole unrest or drawn scrutiny from reformers who were already eyeing Florida's native abuses. The Brickells' silence echoes other tycoons' cover-ups, like the Cabot family's opium trade profits, laundered into Boston's elite circles, or Rockefeller's monopolies, spun as efficient business. Hiding the Seminole exploitation was about protecting the Brickell name, much like they hushed Mary's affair rumors, William's White House secrets, or the siblings' land feud. The Seminoles' side of this story is heartbreaking. By the 1870s, they were a resilient but battered people, numbering under 300 in South Florida after decades of war. Trade was their lifeline, connecting them to goods they couldn't produce in the Everglades. The Brickells' Post was a double-edged sword, vital but predatory. Low pelt prices meant Seminoles had to hunt more, depleting resources while high goods costs trapped them in a cycle of debt, forcing more trade on the Brickell's terms. This wasn't just economics, it was survival, and the Brickells held the cards. Seminole oral histories, passed down through generations, speak of traders who took more than they gave, a veiled nod to posts like Brickell's. The 1896 Ingraham expedition, which mapped the Everglades, noted Seminoles' reliance on trade but also their poverty, hinting at exploitative pricing without naming names. The Brickell's practices, though not fully documented, left a mark on a people already pushed to the brink, much like their 1868 land deal stole Seminole territory. Was this exploitation deliberate? The Brickells weren't cartoon villains. They built a community hub, employed locals, and even advocated for black residents later, as Mary did in the 1890s. But they were products of their time where native exploitation was standard. Traders across Florida, Key West's Jacob Hausman, Fort Lauderdale's Frank Stranahan, used similar tactics, underpaying for goods and overcharging for supplies. The Brickells, though, stood out for their scale. Their post was South Florida's biggest, and their wealth, tied to land and trade, dwarfed others. William's trading savvy, honed in Ohio and Australia, and Mary's bookkeeping made them ruthless operators, prioritizing profit over fairness. This wasn't personal malice, it was business, but it hit the Seminoles hard, fueling a fortune that later sparked family feuds over land sales. The trade's impact rippled through Miami's growth. The Brickell's profits funded their land empire, paving the way for Brickell Avenue's mansions and their 1896 railway donation to Flagler, which turned Miami into a boom town. But the Seminoles saw little of this wealth. By the 1900s, they were pushed deeper into the Everglades, their trade networks strained as Miami's growth encroached. The Brickell's post, closed by 1908 after William's death, left a legacy of wealth for them, but loss for the Seminoles, who faced new threats: land drainage, tourism, and federal policies. The Seminoles' resilience, rebuilding through cattle and tourism by the mid-20th century, shows their strength, but the Brickell's trade practices were a bitter chapter, much like their land deal's displacement. The Brickell's silence on this is telling. By the 1910s, as Miami boomed, they were icons. Founders, philanthropists, their name on streets and parks. Exposing Seminole exploitation could have sparked outrage, especially as native rights gained attention. The family's cover-up mirrors their handling of other secrets: William's wartime role, Mary's affair gossip, or the siblings' feud, culminating in Maud's 1946 mausoleum move. Keeping the trade practices quiet was about preserving their empire's shine, worth millions by 1908, and their status as Miami's visionaries. Much like tycoons like Frick hid labor abuses to protect their steel empires.